Hi and welcome to Hygge and Homeschool. My name is Maya and I'm the homeschooler of a third grader and a toddler. And today I'm going to be talking about 7 Waldorf inspired practices that have totally transformed our homeschool experience. I want to come with a full disclaimer that I'm not Waldorf trained, I'm not a Waldorf teacher, I'm just a homeschool mom who has happened to read a lot about Waldorf, and I grew up with a mom who was very inspired by Waldorf. So what I'm saying is just my own personal experience and how I'm implementing the Waldorf philosophy in our homeschool. So the first thing that really inspired me and that I implemented in our homeschool was the main lesson block. I love that you don't teach every subject every day throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year. I love that we block it out, we dive deep, and then we let it go, let it simmer, and then we go back to it again and again. So we kind of spiral through the different subjects. We do workbooks every day with like the core subjects, like language, arts, and math. But then I do what I call unit studies because I'm not a purist and I don't do it exactly as the Waldorf do. I don't follow their curriculum to the point. I make it kind of my own. I make my own unit studies, but it's very inspired by the Waldorf main lesson blocks. The next thing that we do is also inspired by the main lesson blocks. It is we make our own books. I don't call it main lesson books. I just call it, unit study books. And we also differ a little bit from Waldorf here. I feel in Waldorf the book can sometimes become like the product, where the product is important. For us it's more the process of drawing something, getting it through your hand, reading something and thinking about how can I make this into an illustration, what is the most important thing of what I've just read, or we went through the digestive system and drew it out, and I think it makes like a lot better way of grasping it and thinking about it instead of just reading about it. So that's another way where we've been very inspired but made it our own. The next thing is limited screen time, and I'm trying to implement this one as best as I can. I must say we don't have a TV, so that's a good thing, but we do have iPads, and I feel like I tend to sometimes let the kids use them too much. My goal is not to completely eliminate screens, because I do see a value in a beautiful made documentary that's age appropriate, or some computer games I feel my daughter have gained a lot of things from. So I don't want to eliminate it completely, but I do want to cut it back. And I think we really have to be mindful about how we use screens. We still use them, but we've never had a TV. My husband and I had a TV very briefly when we just started as a married couple, and then it broke, and then we just never got a new one. So that is not like a Waldorf thing that we got rid of it. We've just never had one since our old one broke, 15 years ago. But we do use computers. Even myself, I feel like I use it too much. So I really want to implement lesser screens in our house. So this is one that we're still working on, but it definitely have had a big impact on the way I homeschool, that I don't just immediately jump to a screen. Another way is that I've actually now canceled the last of Matilda's online classes. She's had a lot, especially when my youngest Madison was just born, and I was nursing and she was sleeping and we were homeschooling. And there I depended a lot on online learning for her. But now I feel like we're in a place where we can do so many things together, and we don't need it, and it's really been a good thing to cut it out so we have more time together. We don't have, you have to sit in front of the screen at a certain time, and such. So our days, they have a bit of flow, and I can feel in my own brain that if I'm looking at a screen too much, I need to do something else. I need to create, I need to make some art or something. So yes, lesser screen time. The next one I want to mention is the art. I kind of mentioned it a little in the books, that we put art in our books, that we illustrate a lot. But for me, that was like a big draw, if not the biggest one, towards Waldorf in the beginning. Because I love the pictures you see that the teachers do, that the students do, and that art just is such a big part of the Waldorf curriculum and the Waldorf philosophy. And I feel it gives you something special when you're taught something through art. At least for me it does. So that is like a big thing. I feel, I don't know, maybe it was a permission slip from Steiner that it's okay, you use all the art that you want in your teaching. And maybe I needed that instead of just trusting myself and doing it. But I'm really taking that to my heart, and we're using so much art and handiwork that I never thought I would. But yeah, I'm so glad I gave myself permission, and then I found Waldorf, and that I got inspired, and I'm now using that. The next thing is like the emphasis on free play and open-ended play. And here I was actually surprised at what worked and what didn't work. My mom is still, but when I was a kid, was very inspired by Waldorf. I remember we visited some Waldorf schools. She read up on it. She ended up, when I was in high school, to take a degree in children's pedagogy. I don't know if I pronounced it right, but not in the Waldorf, in a more standardized field. But I think she would have loved the Waldorf one. It just wasn't an option for her. And I remember the first thing that she gave us for Matilda was this Grimm's wooden rainbow. And I was like, what is this? How does she play with it? And I can see it's one of the most open-ended toys imaginable. It can be a mermaid tail. It can be like when you put the circles together, put the bows together, a little circle. Her little animals can be in there, it can be a castle, it can be a town, it can be, a seesaw for some puppets. It was able to give her so much more than I thought. I'm also inspired very much by Montessori. And a thing that have disappointed me a lot in a lot of the Montessori toys that we have borrowed or I've gotten for a household is that they're not very open-ended, which I thought was part of that. But like we have this drop box where we put in some pegs, and then there's something you can pull, and then it drops down. And my 9-year-old, it was for the toddler, was like, this is interesting. She explored it a little bit, and then she just left it there. And the toddler only uses it for the pegs to fall, and when she kind of figured it out, it's like now it's just collecting dust. So I'm actually interested in people's perspective on open and closed toys and how you use it. Another mom I've heard talked about, who was very, very Waldorfy, much more than me, and has much more knowledge about it, talked about Lego as a close-ended toy. But in our family, I feel it's super open-ended. How we use it is the little Legos, not the Duplo ones, but the little Legos. My daughter usually gets a set, for birthday or Christmas from some family. And then she puts it together with her dad. They love it. It's such a beautiful little moment. And when she's done putting it together, then the magic starts. She pulls it apart and builds new things. She makes magical landscapes. The Legos can be food. They can be, magical creatures. They can be anything. But what I heard from that mom was her kid just put them together, follow the instructions, and then put them on a shelf. So I think it's how you use it. The Duplos for me are magical. I know they're plastic, but both my daughters, they play together and they can play for hours. And the Duplos, they can be food, they can be stables, they can be a school. They build a school, houses. They can build so much. They have an ice cream store where the Duplos were different tastes of ice cream. So I feel like that isn't, for us in our family, a very open-ended. And then we also have, the silk scarves that can be anything. They can make a little tent of them. It can be a dress up. They just, that can be food. They put them into a cup and it's an ice cream or a salad or something. But I'm curious because the Montessori toys, for me, a lot of them are very, very close-ended. Some of the ones that we tried, and not that open. But I'm curious if people have comments. Please put them in the comments below. Another thing that really changed my way of looking at homeschool that I got from the Waldorf philosophy was the whole concept of taking the child's development into consideration when developing the unit studies and the curriculums and picking the curriculums, where I feel like a lot of schools start very early, flash cutting the toddlers, letters and numbers, and I don't think I'm necessarily as rigid or strict as Steiner, where I said like the first milk tooth has to come out before we teach the letters. I will let my toddlers, we have some letter games, play with them, but in no way will I force her to learn it and repeat. And we have like an alphabet puzzle with a train where all the letters are on that we can put out on the floor. And I will tell her the letters if she asks me, but I won't sit and repeat and force them upon her. We also do little counting games with little things, but again, it's not like I'm ready for her to, learn math at the age of 2. It's more like little rhymes and fun songs. So I really like that they take that into the whole perspective, and there's just stuff where I can see it's we had a geography book that had like all these horrible events like tornadoes, earthquake, how to prepare, what happens in a fire. And I do think it's important. We have talked about fire safety with our daughter. We have lived near wildfires at different points, and I think it's important, of course, to talk safety to a child. My oldest have started baking, so she's using our gas oven. But I don't think it's necessary to scare her of everything in the world that could go wrong. And of course, we've talked about the possibility, we live in California, of an earthquake, and what do you do? And that is important, but it's not important to have like a whole lesson planned around it and have whole unit studies about earthquake and look at how big they are. They can destroy, they can destroy cities, and here are volcanoes, and let's talk about Pompeii and how so many people died. I think you can protect their childhood while still teaching important skills. And I think both that development to protect the child, but also I heard somewhere, and I can't remember, someone talk about when they introduced, for instance, time, like teaching the clock to a child, that, and it made so much sense to me, that the child needs to have a feeling for time. They need to, like, so if I tell my 2-year-old right now, in 5 minutes we're gonna leave for something, she will have no grasp at how long 5 minutes is. Like some game can feel like forever, and sometimes she feels like she has no time, you know, before she has to go to bed or something. So she doesn't grasp, she doesn't have that perspective on time, where my 9-year-old can kind of, she knows if I ask her, you know, can you count and tell me how long is a minute, she'll have like a sense of it. And then it makes sense to teach the time instead of doing it before the kids are ready. And that has really changed how I view a curriculum, and that it's okay to pull it, and it's okay to wait with something, or if I feel, oh, now is the time where she needs to learn this is exactly where she is in her development, then I'll push that. So yeah, that's really made me think a little more in that sense of, where are my kids, what do they know, where are they developmentally. And then the last thing, and this was one that I brought from my home, and this is where my mom was really inspired by the Waldorf, is the whole rhythm and seasons, and we had traditions and handiwork, and especially also my grandma that I knew. This was the time we planted our garden. This was the time that we harvested and we pickled, and you know, we did all this. We even slaughtered on animals. I don't have any better word, but like this was the time we did that. We got them as little, we fed them up, you know. So that was how it was. I didn't live like on a farm, but we have some ducks. And they laid duck eggs. I asked my mom actually today, because I was thinking of making this video why we didn't have chickens, but she said there was no good reason. It is also very unusual to have ducks instead of chickens in Denmark, I want to say. But yeah, so those rhythms and routines, and the year going around, and we made chestnut animals every fall, and I really loved that my mom gave that to me. And now reading about it in the Waldorf context has made me a lot more aware of, you know, the importance of the yearly seasonal rhythm. When I started out, when I was a new mom, when we started out, I won't call it homeschooling, but like started doing activities when Matilda was like in the toddler stage, I was like very rigid in the very beginning. It was a very short time, but where I was like, at 8 o'clock we need to do this, at you know, 1 o'clock you need to go down for your nap. I was very rigid with my schedule. I had a mom friend at the time who was also, at 4 o'clock we leave for the playground, and at 5 o'clock we go home again from the playground, and she followed it so strict, and I kind of did the same, and it stressed me out, and I couldn't follow that timeline, you know, because then, oh no, suddenly there was a diaper change, and suddenly there was this and that, and then we were reading a book, and Matilda wanted me to read it again and again, and it was we had super fun with it, but I knew that in half an hour we needed to start on a singing lesson or something that I put in the schedule. And then I found a Waldorf rhythms, which was much more, you know, the flow of the day that you have. Now we have these slow mornings, and if we sit down for schoolwork, if it's 10, if it's 10:30, even if it's 11, it's fine. You know, we go through breakfast, we go through after breakfast, the kids need, you know, an aufbreath where they play and run around, and then before we sit down and gather around the schoolwork, that is kind of an in-breath where we slow down. To think that into our everyday life has really made a big impact on how I homeschool. So that was I think it was 7 things that I have been very inspired from, and that has really changed my way of homeschooling in the Waldorf tradition. But again, I don't follow a Waldorf curriculum, and we're not purists, but I'm really, really inspired by the philosophy. I hope you could use this video. I'm so glad you watched it, and yeah, bye-bye.